Hey y'all, I'm the captain, and this is Sailing on the Spectrum, where I talk about the challenges growing up with autism spectrum disorder. Welcome aboard. It's been a little while since I last posted, and today I'm starting back on kind of a heavy note. I'm going to talk about bullying and being bullied. It is very agreed upon that kids and even adults on the spectrum are far more prone to be victimized by bullies. And that was certainly the case with me. I would say that growing up, especially once I was in school with a ton of other kids and just navigating the day in, day out struggle of trying to cope, I guess, with the strains of being around so many other kids and trying to just fit in and deal with all the sensory input around me, it was certainly a lingering, lurking problem every day to deal with bullies. And it is well known that bullies can be a very special target because of their because kids on the spectrum are known to be socially awkward and don't come off as very, I guess, sociable. They have quirks in their behavior that bullies definitely target as weakness, and I certainly was the recipient of that a lot. I don't know if I really had it as much until maybe I started to a little bit uh, early on, but especially in fourth and fifth grade. Those were the worst years, I would say, or the years in which I had some of the worst experiences. I know in fourth grade there were some boys that were rather obnoxious, and as someone on the spectrum, especially when you're confronted or when you encounter someone who is perhaps loud and boisterous and obnoxious and in your face, it can impact you in a way that probably is even more intense than it would most other, if you will, neurotypicals, uh, people who aren't on the spectrum. And so oftentimes we're stunned and we don't know how to respond maybe right then. And we're sometimes just taken aback and, put in our shell. But then when bullies, being who they are, they tend to just, hone in on you and try to, pour it on because they see you're weak and they want to, just exercise their dominance. And so kids on the spectrum, definitely are vulnerable to that. They may not be the only ones who are vulnerable, but they certainly are a particularly vulnerable group when it comes to being bullied. And I certainly was. And I certainly didn't have any ideas or concept of myself to where I felt like I could defend myself or fight back. And sadly, I guess maybe because of the struggles I had with the world around me and feeling like I didn't fit in, I wasn't sure if I was really worth standing up for myself. It didn't really feel good. And I know in fourth grade there was one incident in particular. I remember my lunchbox being hidden from me. I know that it was hard. I know on the spectrum, if you're a picky eater like I was, many kids on the spectrum, might have definitely quirks about what they eat. I certainly did not like the idea, for the most part, of eating school lunches because I just didn't really like the idea of eating most of the food they had. There were exceptions, there might be days where they had something and I would eat it, but most times I want my lunchbox with me, that with the lunch my mom had prepared, and that's what I'd want to eat, and it would be a security thing, just to know that I had that with me. Sure enough, one day, I think it turned up missing. And the teacher I had in fourth grade at the time, honestly, was rather stern, and in that particular case was rather unsympathetic. She actually told me I should just eat a school lunch. She actually seemed put off by the fact that I didn't just go and eat lunch with the other kids. She ended up holding the whole class back at recess just to find out who hid my lunchbox, because we did end up finding it actually in the coat closet. But the fact that the whole class was held back from recess just to find out who did it kind of made it seem like I was ruining everything for everybody else, and the teacher ended up actually congratulating the kid who confessed to it because he told the truth. It's like, I didn't even seem like, it seemed like the kid didn't really get so much in trouble for it as just simply got complimented. It really made me feel like I didn't have any advocate or safety net as far as grown-ups. I felt very alone and kind of at my own mercy. There was an incident in 5th grade. I remember at that point I'd actually got put in a class with other kids, kind of as they would call a special class for the challenged kids. And I remember a couple of the kids in that class being particularly mean. One who was much larger than I, or most others even in his grade, who I think had been held back a grade or two, and he certainly was difficult because he was obnoxious and certainly loved to just pick on me very mercilessly. There was one time where we were on the bus on the way to the other school where this class had to meet, and he and another obnoxious guy were being particularly vicious. I probably was so irked by it to the point where I just probably said a thing or two that, I don't know, might have rubbed him the wrong way. I don't know if I just felt like I had to stand up for myself somehow, or I was just giving it back to them. But I think he got so mad, he actually shook me and pushed me up against a wall like he was going to pound me, and it scared me to death. I want to say the teachers may or may not have dealt with it, but all I know is when we got back to our other school and I was about to head back to my regular class, he caught me in before I had a chance to go up the stairs and actually tried to corner me and challenge me to a fight and act like he had his fists up like he was ready to wail on me, and I cried and was almost fearing for my safety. And thankfully, I believe it was the school librarian caught him and took him away and dealt with him. And I ran back to class just in absolute tears and just shaken up. I remember going home so mad and so full of fear and rage. My mom found out about it. I think she was scared more of what I might want to do, either to myself or someone else. I certainly wasn't about to go do anything. I didn't know what else to do. I remember saying to my mom in the car, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. And I was just through tears, just yelling that. And I think my mom was scared. Not that I really was going to do that, but I just didn't know how else to express myself. It was hard enough to express myself on a daily basis if I felt like I'd experienced something like bullying. And a lot of kids on the spectrum have that issue because they can't express themselves very easily. They're just trying to come down from all the challenges they've been through during the day. And if they've experienced bullying, a lot of times that can cause them to draw in themselves and try to hide and cope some way. And it doesn't involve, opening up to an adult who's trying to tell them or ask them what's going on. What's wrong with you? Like my parents would say, what, did somebody say something to you? They would just they'd almost be like they had to interrogate it, get it out of me because they were so scared. And you can understand why they might have been really scared for my sake, or wonder why I was acting up or so gruff when I was home. But I just had to come through that, and it was just, it was just kind of like you couldn't do anything but be in survival mode all my years through school, day in and day out. And that's something that kids on the spectrum have as a real challenge and a real difficulty, and it's something that definitely, I would say, shaped or damaged really a lot of my self-image. It's not that I chose to have a bad self-image, it's just that it was hard for me to really picture a world that really welcomed me for who I was, especially when so much of what was already around me made me feel so out of place, or like I just didn't fit in. And then when the most vivid experiences and stark experiences that you had in school were just kids who were the worst to you, sometimes those are the things that stick the most. That's something that definitely on the spectrum, it's hard to really, just mute those negative thoughts, those negative experiences, and those negative things that you remember. And bullies definitely they just seem to have in your head, it seems like their voices are always being raised above everything else, even the ones who love you. And it's hard to really know how to experience, real love and acceptance when it just doesn't seem like you fit in. And then when bullies, do nothing but tease you and push you around mercilessly, that's the kind of thing that sticks in your head. And I remember in middle school, it kept happening. I remember in 8th grade, I remember kids actually in the cafeteria one day, they actually sang me happy birthday. And as it turned out, it was because they were kind of trying to make fun of me. And I didn't even know if it was, sometimes that's another thing. Sometimes kids, can just pick on somebody who's on the spectrum just to see how they'll react. And sometimes and sometimes if you're on the spectrum, you may not know that you're being picked on or you're being mocked, but you might think that you're actually being, part of the crowd, but you're just really being picked on. And I guess that was another thing. I guess it kind of scared me a bit. I remember the teacher actually had to tell the class, without me in the room, why they should all be ashamed of that. I remember her having to explain that to me, and that just made me embarrassed, and it's, I remember another kid actually teasing me by just getting in my face and pulling his shirt up and, trying to act like he was, exposing himself. I remember that made me so put off. I remember it was just a couple of days before the 8th grade social. I didn't even want to go to the social. I just was like, I was done with everybody, and it felt sad, but it's like I just didn't want to be around anybody, and I didn't want to go to a social and act like I had to just be one of just be in there with everybody else and like I fit in or anything. It was just, that's the kind of way I felt. It was always this nagging feeling of inferiority that just seemed to just, I guess, follow me around everywhere. Even in 9th grade, I remember some kids, a couple of obnoxious kind of jock guys, guys who were on the football team, pick on me, and it was always not feeling like I could stand up for myself or feeling like I always felt like, the guys who picked on me, had it, just seemed like they had it all together, and maybe the fact that I was getting bullied just meant that I was meant to have it. I was just the scratching post. And I really had a lot of healing to do that was hard to do when, every school year, you wondered if you were really going to finally be somebody who could be on a level with everybody else. It contributes to a lot of anxiety and depression that is already very prevalent among people on the spectrum. And sadly, it also leads to a suicide risk. I thankfully never had the want to kill myself when I was coming through school. I was still even into my adulthood, though, I think, in a way, kind of marked by some of the, I guess, feelings I had coming through as a kid, adolescent, and then even young adult. that made me feel like I would always be trying to play catch up with the rest of the world or the rest of society or the rest of humanity. And even by the time I got married, interestingly enough, and by the time I became a daddy, I just always felt like, oh, this is just another thing for me to screw up. This is another time for people to just come down on me. And I really had no reason to feel like that. I had no reason to feel like I had things about myself to prove, so to speak. But I guess coming through all those years and all those experiences of getting picked on, or even when I wasn't getting picked on, just feeling like I had to work hard, that much harder to fit in and get along with the world and with the world around me, I guess it just made me feel like I always had to prove myself, and that responsibilities just meant that was another occasion for me to either prove myself or just fall flat and just look and feel like a failure. There's another video about where I do about adulting on the spectrum, and that's something else that people on the spectrum can struggle with. And thankfully, I've managed to get the adulting thing down fairly well, at this stage of my life, and even for the last several years of my life, I would say, it just, but it's definitely, the experiences of bullying are very, very real, and a very real issue for those on the spectrum. And it's important to know that it is a source of great anxiety and depression, and that people in that boat really need to be advocated for. And if you happen to be somebody on the spectrum and you experience something like this, please know you are worth it. You are worth advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself. And I mean by that I mean, don't just fight back and swing fists at everything and everybody that bothers you. I mean, go find some people who can help you. If your teachers won't help you, if your principal won't help you, if your boss won't help you, if you're adult, find some people. I'm going to do whatever I can to put enough links in the description to as many professional outlets that can help people in that situation, whether it be by means of counseling, helping with anxiety or depression or other issues that arise from your difficulties that you feel have been made worse by bullies, or if you fear for your safety, or if you just need somebody to talk to. And especially if you feel like you're having thoughts of harm either yourself or others, or suicide, please know that you are worth getting help for. And it's important to know that you've got to stand up, not only to so much the bullies themselves, but the negative things they put in your head. Find whoever can be in your corner. And I will say this, that the experiences I've had, as much as they've hurt me, I am glad that I have managed to have a heart that can stand up for the vulnerable and the weak. And I really want to let that be my calling, and my the way in which I can best use the experiences I have is to help people, is to stand up for people who can't always stand up for themselves. I know that it is a noble calling to be able to do that. And if you're not somebody on the spectrum, if you know somebody who is, please do what you can to affirm them, to put your arm around them, either literally or just in the sense that you're just there for them. You just, let them know that, hey, I see what you're going through. Just please do whatever you can to get in their corner, because you may actually save their life. I mean, not just talking about saving their life from someone else who's bullying them and trying to harm them. I would say just even they may try to harm themselves, because it can get that bad. And it's a very real issue. Even as an adult, I experienced bullying on the job once. And it's really important, as it was even then, that I had people who knew me and understood me and sympathized and were there with me and there for me. I am so happy that I came through that, and that I can say that I have a wife and little girl that I know how to hug and love and be there for, and that I don't have to be defined by the taunts and the insults of bullies and of people who just have no business knowing who I am or what I'm about. Just know that you're worth it. You are worth it. Thank you very much for listening. This is the Captain, and I'll see you on our next voyage.